Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Today I'm going to make a cuff bracelet, and it's going to be a mixed metal piece. And I had some leftover twisted copper wire where I twisted 3 strands of 12 gauge copper wire together. And I thought maybe since I had some of that left over, I'd use it to make a cuff bracelet with a silver border around it. I've done some herringbone kind of pattern things out of twisted wire before, and if you want to see some previous rings I did with that pattern, there's an old video up there that's a pretty good one. I'm going to do the same sort of thing, but I'm going to do it in a cuff bracelet and border it with some flattened 12 gauge square wire, I believe. So we'll see how it turns out. Before we do that, I wanted to thank some people. The first group are my patrons, who are my core group of supporters. I have a new one, Alexandra B. Thank you for signing up. I really appreciate your support. I think you'll find that it's a great group of people with a lot of talent who are interested in helping each other out. So enjoy the environment over there. I know that I do. I do appreciate their financial support, but I also really appreciate being able to interact with them and tap into their knowledge. So thank you for being such a cool group. My other group is my YouTube subscribers. If you aren't one of those yet, you should be maybe. I have 23,600 and some. That's amazing. Thank you so much for that. I never ever thought that I'd have that many followers on YouTube, but thank you for that. I do really appreciate the kind comments. It's nice to know when someone lets me know that I've helped them in some way. It makes me feel like I'm doing some good. I do really appreciate financial support from people on YouTube as well, like the Buy Me a Coffees and the Super Thanks. The merch store, if you buy my ebooks, all of those things really keep my channel sustainable and make this a way I can make my living. So thank you for that. All right, well, let's get started on this bracelet. So this is one of my design idea sketchbooks that are available on my merch store. This particular one has a gauge to inches to millimeter chart on the back that I use all the time. Some of the other ones have different charts and information about metalsmithing on them. So you should check those out. I find them really useful. I keep track of my projects in them and keep a sketch of whatever I do. So if I ever want to go back and remake it, I have a kind of a catalog of how I did it. It also has this nice dot matrix in the background that's kind of like graph paper but not as intrusive. And so get yourself one or two of these. I think they're a really great way to keep track of what you're doing. My drawing today is less than marvelous because I had to draw a million little ovals because I'm trying to represent what one of these copper twisted wires was. And this is 3 strands of 12 gauge copper wire, which is about 2 millimeter wire. So we had an electrician do some work a while back, and he left some of this 12 gauge wire for me since they were just cut off, so we're going to get recycled. And so I've been using those in jewelry. But I had a couple of pieces left over. This is the one I've kind of gotten to be about what I want this to look like on half of it. I have a few other ones too, but the problem is if you're going to do a herringbone sort of thing with these, you want them to go in opposite directions, whether they meet up in the center. And so if you'll notice, this twist is in the same direction. Doesn't matter if you turn it around this way, it's still in the same direction. So we need to actually twist it in the opposite direction when we make the twisted wire. So I spun these ones to the right with my drill, and these ones will spin to the left with the drill. And I've got 3 more pieces of that stuff, and we'll twist those together. Hopefully we can get a similar looking twist on this one. My thought is on the outside I'm going to use some maybe some 12 gauge square wire that is flattened a little bit so it's kind of thinner in profile. And I think that'll look nice. And then I thought to kind of cap these in a nice rounded way, I thought I'd make some big silver balls. Big silver balls, when you make them on a charcoal block, had a tendency to kind of flatten out a little bit because of just the weight of them. So we'll make a nice kind of flattish silver ball to end those with and solder those in there. So a couple of things we need to do. First, we need to twist the other one of these in the opposite direction. Then I need to straighten it out, and then I need to flatten it out. And what I did was I just used my chasing hammer and flattened it on my bench block, and I'll do that for the second one here. And then I think in order to solder these together and get a nice seam, we need it to be as flat as possible on the inside seam. So I'm going to clamp them together with some C-clamps probably, and we'll keep them on a flat surface, and I'll try and file them both flat on one side at least. Let's see if we can get it pretty good. I want, since we're using silver solder, it's going to show up if you have a lot of excess solder in there, so I want it to be relatively unobtrusive, and the flatter I get that, the less of that solder will be showing once we polish it up. So this is about a size bracelet that'll fit me, at least what's here, and that's pretty close to the length. So we'll cut that down a little bit when we're getting ready to make this, but this is about a 7.5 inch or 19 centimeters, somewhere in that range. So, alright, well, let me grab my drill with that. I already chucked it into the drill. 3 wires chucked nicely into a drill. The other end I have clamped in a vice grips like this. So right now, oh, it's going the correct way. So I'll probably cut it up, but I just had a mishap. One of the wires broke in the middle. I must have had a weak spot. So let's try that again. I think I'm going to anneal this one just to soften it back up. When you twist something like that, it work hardens it really badly. So let's see if we can kind of soften the metal back up so it's a little more malleable. Let that cool down for a minute. Alright, so it's much more squishy again. Squishy is good. I think this is relatively straight, and then I'm just going to hammer it. Okay, I'm not going to need near this whole thing, but I am going to probably take the best portion, thing that I like the best, which part of it I like the best. Try and spend a little time getting these as flat as I can this dimension as well. probably going to do a little smoothing with the file too up front. Well, all that hammering was therapeutic. So I'll keep working on that some more. I'll probably show you right after I'm done again how much I've done, and I'll do the other side at the same time. And to get the rest of this down here, I'll flip it around and retape it and just do this side. So be right back. So I got that side, that side. I'm going to pull them apart now and get them straightened out and see how they line up, and then we'll see. All right, I have these lined up pretty well, I think. Close enough, I think, hopefully. So if you haven't been to my channel before, I use primarily hard silver sheet solder. I use a little dropper bottle to put on liquid flux. My torch is a Silversmith model. It's a acetylene air torch. It pulls in atmospheric air through here to mix with the gas, versus an acetylene air torch, versus oxyacetylene torch, which has two tanks, one oxygen, one acetylene. So that produces a really hot flame. This produces a medium hot flame, quite a bit hotter than a propane or a butane torch. So it's a really good torch. I like it. I'm going to do something called pick soldering, where I pick up a little bit of solder and I place it pretty precisely where I want it to go. It's one of those skills, I think, that helps you to become quite a bit better at this. So if you're interested, I'll put a link up there. I have a pretty good video about it. Okay, that should get us started. Okay, so this is a titanium soldering pick. Just pick up a little bit of solder here like this. I think I might tack it at one side and then at the other to kind of keep things lined up. let's evaluate that. We'll let it sit here for a minute to cool off. Set it over here to cool for a minute. My next step is going to be, after I cool that off, is to file it again the same way I have been filing it, to get everything all as flat and smooth as possible when they're lined up like that. So, see how that goes. I'm going to do the rest off camera so you don't have to watch me do the same thing for a long time. Okay, I got this pretty much filed up, so it's pretty good. I think this side that has the excess solder on, I'll put on the back. So the other part didn't bleed through too much. I'll probably do a little further filing on this before we solder it all together, but I wanted to continue on to the next step. We need to make some little silver balls for the end. Let's see. Found some scrap on the table. Let's see if we can get some reasonably sized balls. Needs a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and melt this one, then I'll cut 2 more little pieces of something and we'll add it to each one. So we'll cut those off right there. Probably, let's just cool these off and then we can scribe a line and we'll just use the saw. Maybe these do need to be a little bit bigger. I'm going to make them a little bigger. I think it's fun to watch it go through the stages where it resolidifies. It kind of shiny like a mirror, and you got a little bit of mercury kind of thing. If you're having trouble with having wrinkles on the surface or bumpy balls, don't just heat it right to where it barely melts. Heat it to where you have it significantly above the melting temperature of the sterling. And that seems to kind of burn out any kind of goobers. Let's do this. You're going to kind of hold it like that, and then I'll use a T-pin. make a mark where the outside of that is. We'll know where to cut it. So I'm just going to go saw these out really quick. Okay, let's see. Okay, I'm going to clean that up with the file. Then we'll see how those fit in there. All right. Let me get this to work. There's going to be a little bit of slop on this over there. And we have a big disparity in mass on this particular piece. This copper has a ton of mass compared to these balls at the end. So it's going to take a lot longer to get the copper up to its soldering temperature. That's why I'm hitting mostly the center part. In one of the little breaks I took, I flattened out some of this 12 gauge square with my rolling mill. So we're going to need to cut a piece that's a little more than twice as long as this. Let's cut it about right here. I'm thinking let's let this cool further over here. Okay, I'm going to use an abrasive white wheel on my Dremel to remove any excess solder up here so that I don't have a lot of slop that I'm trying to get out of here. And then we'll figure out just exactly how big a piece we need of this to go around there. So I'll be right back. Alright, let's start by getting one of these ends nice. I don't want the solder joint to be on the end because it'll make it harder to get it neat. So I'm going to kind of mark where I want this to bend. So right about here. And then I think I'm going to use my bail making pliers because those are super handy for stuff like this. Supposing I can find them. That's pretty good. Pretty tight around there, so let's see if we can get it. What do you think? Can we get it perfect? If I cut it right where they meet and then file, it'll be snug and I'll have to really force it over it. So that's my logic here. Okay, I think that'll work. I'm going to, I think I'm going to use my Dremel and my file to kind of file the bottoms of these balls a little flatter. Alright, let's see if we can get this soldered on here. I think it's relatively important to get it pretty flat and snug in here if we want to have a nice seam. So let's This is proving to be a little bit more formidable solder operation than I expected. cool this off just for a minute. So that was interesting. I've never seen that happen before where it started to pull away, and I suspect it has something to do with the copper and the silver, but I'm not sure. I'm curious if anybody knows, if they would share it with me. Because I have not seen that happen before. That was really odd. Let's see if we can get the rest of those soldered now that it's a little tighter together. Well, that was a lot of heat. There's quite a bit of metal here, so that took some energy to do that. So I'm going to let that cool for a while, and then I'm going to pickle it. Alright, well there's a herringbone copper and silver bracelet. I think I like this one. It was kind of a bear soldering the silver to the sides for some reason, and we had that weird kind of bulging outwards thing happening. So if any of you know what was going on there, I'm curious. I have not seen that happen before. Although I don't know if I've soldered this much copper to some silver before. So interesting experiment. I like the result, and thankfully it looks much better than my drawing. So I'll get some better pictures and put them at the end. Okay, well that was the herringbone cuff bracelet. I hope that you enjoyed that. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you go. I would also love it if you'd take a moment and check out my main channel page on YouTube. I have 540 videos now. I haven't checked lately, but I do 3 per week, one on Tuesday, one on Thursday, and one on Saturday, so there's a lot of content there, some of which is actually very useful. Check it out. There's certainly lots of projects and some skills you can learn. And there's all different levels, so view a few, subscribe to my channel, and then come back and see me again. The other thing is check out the video description down below. There's some important links there. There's a link to my Patreon if you want to find out more about that platform. That's a place where people can get away from the YouTube advertisements at the lowest level, and then the different tiers offer other perks like live streams and specialized tutorials just for Patreon and things like that. So you might want to check that out. There's a link to my merch store if you want to get yourself one of those nice design idea sketchbooks or some other merch. And there's also a link to my ebooks, particularly my latest one, which is 2024's Guide to the Tutorials. It includes a page for each of the different tutorials I did last year with a link to the actual tutorial and extra information about it, including a picture of the sketch that I drew, the final outcome, a list of materials you need to make the project, difficulty rating, however subjective, and some notes I made about the project, like whether I would do it again, whether I thought that the outcome was good, did I learn anything from it, would I do it differently in the future, all those sorts of things. So it's a really nice way to have a whole bunch of projects in your hand, and also a super nice way to support my channel. So thank you in advance if you choose to do that. I appreciate it. All right, well, thanks for watching today. Take care. Happy silversmithing.